So I'm just going to start with a few brief opening remarks. Innovation leads to dramatic technological improvements and advancement of living standards for the greater good, as Matt Ridley said, from steam engines to search engines, from vaccines to Web 3.0. Airbnb disrupted the hotel industry, Uber transformed transportation, SpaceX is changing the face of space travel. I can go on, but you get the drift. It's difficult to gauge the speed of technological progress when disruption is the norm. And with the ongoing pandemic brought a myriad of calamities, but there was one silver lining, the exponential growth of digital entrepreneurs, or the COVIDpreneurs, leveraging technology to deliver innovative solutions. India saw the birth of more than 1,600 tech startups in 2000, according to NASSCOM. A record of 43 Indian startups entered the Unicorn Club in 21. Digital transformation market in India is on its way to hitting 710 billion by 24. AI, cloud computing, robotics is estimated to generate $1 trillion of economic growth by 25. Architects of India's stack with innovations like Aadhaar and UPI have been, well received and also envy of many countries world over. And as they say, India leads digital, digital leads India. And I think some of our panelists are not going to agree with me on that. But that's the point of the conversation. This JLF stage is the perfect platform to discuss this topic today. The festival has exhibited both innovation and entrepreneurship, first becoming global, moving beyond the physical borders of India, and harnessing the power of the digital space. So welcome to digital entrepreneurship, innovation, and the cyber future. And it gives me a great opportunity to speak with these aviators, navigators, captains of technology leadership. And through their shoulders, we're going to get a little insight into the cyber future. So, Asha, I'm going to start with you, because ladies first, chivalrous. As said, change is the only constant in life. And with the constant explosion, disruption, evolution in the tech business, yourselves all being trailblazers in the space, can you share a few opening remarks, very brief, on the journey that you have seen the digital space go through and witness in the last few years?
Digital space in India, or just you're talking globally?
Globally and India, because I want to take the conversation back there.
I think globally, of course, there's been, I think there is, technology is something that is a force of nature, and it's going to keep evolving fast, and faster the more time it takes, the more we are going to see disruptive technologies, just because the power of AI and chip industry has doubled and tripled so fast. But I think on the India side, I think something that you alluded to, Asad, is that we have two things which is an envy of America, which is the UPI and the other. The India stack is something that you guys have pulled off like nobody has ever seen on the planet. I have no idea how, because at this scale, we cannot do it for 100 million in America. Forget 1.4 billion. How this has been pulled off is something that we are still scratching our heads about, I think so. So I think on that front, yes, there is a massive leapfrog that's going on. I think what is slow in India right now is the development of the product industry, is tech products. So we are still coming out of the services. We are now getting into the product company sort of stage, and we are doing tons of good stuff on B2B. On consumer internet, we are still a little bit weak. We are still behind. But I think given the democratizing force of UPI and Aadhaar, it's going to be, the sky is the limit to what we are going to see.
Great. Thank you. MR, you've been an angel investor since 96, 97, even before that term was in vogue. So how has entrepreneurship landscape changed over the last 25 years or so?
So it's been dramatic since COVID. So you have to look at this in the following way as listeners here and the audience. So there's pre-COVID, lots of things were happening. COVID happened. And when COVID happened, everything digitized at a dramatic pace, right? None of us could have existed during COVID without our phone, without being able to order anything, look for anything, get anything. It just was a dramatic change, right? Satya Nadella said, hey, what I did in 6 months at Microsoft would have taken, many years prior to COVID, right? Then now what we're talking about is post-COVID. what's going to happen post-COVID, right? So everybody's here, everybody's digitized, and now in Silicon Valley, everybody's investing in things that most of you wouldn't have really dug your heels into, right? Whether it's metaverse, what the hell is metaverse? What is Web 3.0? What is blockchain? What is DAO? What is this? What is that? Whole bunch of acronyms, but the VCs in Silicon Valley have invested billions in every single one of these places. So for us as consumers of technology, we got to see what's coming. And I think that's where you'll see the change happen, is what the future holds when billions of dollars of money has been invested with crazy founders all over Silicon Valley and other places trying to invent these new things.
And I mean, when we come to Benny next, he's going to probably throw some light on that. Suhel, I'm going to start with you now. You know, with a reach of 4.7 million on Twitter, you regularly address management institutes across the world. You're an advocate for ethics in entrepreneurship. And having said, it doesn't matter how many unicorns a country has, but how ethically they have built it. And in the last 2 years, you've seen the exponential growth of unicorns in India. How does the growth of digital entrepreneurship correspond with the decline of traditional leadership?
I don't think it's one or the other. Artificial intelligence coexists with natural stupidity across countries, including in this one. So I don't think, it's one or the other. And I have some good news for this audience. An Indian at 4 p.m. this evening has just bought the White House on Metaverse. So there's a lot of stupidity happening in the digital world as well, as you well know. But you know what MR's point is, I don't look at things from a digital, non-digital perspective. I look at things from a consumer evolution perspective. Consumers evolve and brands evolve when they are interdependent. Today you have a dog walking site invested in by Masa of SoftBank because people are now too lazy to walk their dogs. And I mean, does it work? Isn't it ironic that the world's largest accommodation platform doesn't own a single hotel room? Or that Uber doesn't own a single car, in spite of the fact that they tormented poor Shazia today. So, these are realities that we live in, and the times that we live in. What I believe is going to change are the following. Number one, entrepreneurship will no longer be measured whether you're a digital entrepreneur or a non-digital, because the money that you make will go to the same bank, unless, of course, you're in the Bitcoin business. Number two, people are going to see the impact that your entrepreneurial ventures have on how society or lives of consumers change. To that end, as MR said, if people were happy ordering stuff because the pandemic forced them to stay indoors, good. Sometimes compulsions of a natural kind, or of an unnatural kind in this case, force brands and consumers to recalibrate, repurpose, and readapt. Third, I genuinely believe that with digital entrepreneurship, what you define as digital entrepreneurship, there will come a lot of accountability. Companies and individuals holding great positions have to become more accountable. They are now answerable in the immediate rather than the short and long term. Today, if you want to criticize a Mahindra vehicle and you tag Anand Mahindra responds with alacrity. The reason he responds with alacrity is he knows the damage that it can cause. But there is also anonymity on digital platforms. That we need to kind of course correct. We have seen in India, whether it is the BJP or the Congress, who have armies of trollers, people who are paid by the party to put forth a certain point of view. Those jokers are now so stupid at times that they're even copying the same tweet. So at least change the comma or be more punctuation literate. So I think with time, all those things will change. Having said that, I'm a great believer that India has shown the way in digital leadership. We have shown the way in digital foresight, and more Indians are using more and more digitized avenues to conduct business and conduct life.
Thank you for those comments. Benny, just to continue what MR said, you earlier said that we're entering an age in which post-marketing era, and the only way left to market is to be useful and meaningful in people's lives. And earlier we had this conversation, and we talked about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurs are on the verge of this great shift that's going to happen with these blended models with Web3 and the metaverse coming into the force. What are the challenges you foresee for the businesses?
Well, the main challenge is the challenge that faces all human beings all the time with change, which is inertia. Which is, we see the change coming. We know that there's time to change. You think about how many people, there are forest fires in California going on right now. There's like a storm approaching. People will still stay in their homes. Why would they do that? That's an insane thing to do, right? It's an irrational thing. People are just attached to habit. That is, I think, the biggest problem, is that businesses need to get out of their old siloed mentality. There is no silo anymore. We look at everything in terms of, all businesses look at everything in terms of the customer decision journey, right? That customer decision journey is now very fluid and happens at a pace that you can't imagine, and in a way that requires very integrated thinking, which has not been there in the past. If you look at the way companies are structured, if you look at, and I don't just say this about Indian companies, I work with global companies, they're all structured for like the 1980s. And they don't seem to understand that approach does not work anymore. So number one challenge, I think, is the ability to break down the silos within your own organization and understand that everybody needs to be talking to everybody else. Sales needs to be talking to marketing, needs to be talking to customer service, needs to be talking to technology, to privacy, to safety, et cetera, et cetera. The second challenge is really a lack of imagination. And that's something that, especially in India, I see a lot of fast following and not enough of origination of creative ideas. And I'm very proud of India as a country that has given the world some of its greatest ideas. And some of those great ideas are people, but many of them are actually great ideas. And I would love to see a culture where that creativity is encouraged, because you need to say to people, you know what, the world of theater is gone. Now there's a new technology called television. Imagine what entertainment might look like on television. That's the conversation you would have been having in the 1950s. Today you have to say, the world of the internet in 2D, which is interactive, has gone, and it's now going to become 3D, and it's going to be immersive. So what are the implications of that? I think it's world-changing when you think about the fact that right now all of us are sitting like this, staring at this little thing in front of our faces, and now you're going to be in it as if you were next year you might be sitting right here in this, interacting with this panel. What are the possibilities in that? You need that imagination. So one is you need the courage to break through the inertia, and the second is you need the imagination to conceptualize what might be done with technology. Because technology is an inert and impartial tool. It depends on what you do with it. It depends on your ideas and your creativity.
But the breaking down of silos, that was a problem even before technology, even before digitization. Every company, big or small, for the groups talking to each other, we've always seen that it was an issue. But I'm going to come back to the creativity and the brain drain part that we're going to go to. But going back to you, Asha, what are the main attributes you look at, because in startups or founders, that makes you interested in them? Why do you invest, and what guides this decision for some of the entrepreneurs in the room?
Yes, yeah. I think it's, so when I'm looking at a startup, the main thing, I would say 90% of what matters are the people behind it, who the founders are, what is there. And I'm actually personally partial to technologists. I personally am not, I don't relate to, let's say if it was a team of founders that was with just a couple of MBAs, I may walk away from that. I need a PhD in computer science. I need EE computer science chip guys to be at the core of a founding team. So that's critical for me. That's the first attribute. I would say the second would be the market size. Who are you going after? And are you a platform play or are you a widget? So if you're a widget, then again, that's something I'm not interested in because that's a small play. But is this a platform play that can apply across the board? And is it global in its reach? So that's what I shoot for when I'm looking at startups, even if it's just 2 people.
Thank you for that. MR, we were talking earlier, you said you're going to be hosting a summit for 100 CEOs this weekend. And you've been a strong advocate for cultivating networks that have impact. And how has innovation changed this nature of networking?
Yeah, I think the digital space has changed it dramatically, but there's still no substitute for meeting together like this. I think there's a different feel, different set of honest conversations that can be had. There's no tweeting, there's no LinkedIn, there's no, we talk honestly amongst ourselves, right, without the fear of retribution. So I think when you look at the future, there are 2 areas that you have to kind of separate. One is the business to business segment. Those are the CEOs I'm hosting this coming weekend, 100 of the top CEOs. They're focused on B2B, right? Very different than business to consumer, which is what a lot of people here are talking about as well. The business to business thing is much different in that we have to show value to the company to get a deal. With the consumer, it's very different. It's like, how can you give instant gratification? How can you do? So it's a very different mindset. I work mainly with people who are dealing with businesses where they have to service an account, a customer, and so you have to, when we have this discussion, separate the 2 between B2B, which is one segment, and B2C, which is where it gets all the notoriety and the PR, right? So in the B2C space, I have no freaking idea where it's going. With all these acronyms out there, who knows, right? Who thought TikTok would be the biggest brand 3 years ago or 5 years ago, right? It's the biggest brand. But who knows what the next one is? I have no idea, nor does Meta or any of these companies professing to be in the B2C space. It's a crapshoot.
Good to know. Suhel, you talk about humility and empathy being the cornerstones of business. So what learnings do you have for upcoming digital entrepreneurs who want to create economic value while nurturing value, doing business for good?
See, while the topic is digital, I just want to move away. Imagine you're in the consumer domain, with due respect to MR and his aversion to consumers. Obviously, he's only operating on a business-to-business basis, dealing with pedigree for pet food for animals that he hasn't seen. But largely, some of us deal with consumers and consumer behavior. So I don't think you should give that prefix, and I'll tell you why. Human behavior has remained largely unchanged. The methods of gratification have changed. Some are instant, some are non-instant. Some are available at your fingertips, some are not. A, B, I sat on the global board of British Airways for 6 years. At that time, we were going through this whole fuel issues. Everyone said, people will stop flying, people do virtual meetings, blah, blah, blah. It didn't happen. Everyone thought post-pandemic, dinner sizes will become small, public events won't happen, people will be wary. People aren't. You cannot change consumer behavior or human behavior, as it were, overnight. So technology has to be adaptive. It can't erect barriers. So technologies that are barrier-free are the ones that work more, which is why her point is right. You need science intervention to make it simple, to make it amenable, and to make it last long. Second, about empathy. You've got to recognize that there is an era and an air of fear for a lot of consumers. It's surprising statistic. When we launched Jio Reliance, we figured that India was the capital of missed calls in the world. Everyone gave a missed call because no one wanted to spend money on the call. So you gave a missed call to your driver, you gave a missed call to your help, you actually missed your wife calling her. You did all kinds of crazy things. So if no one was talking, why the hell would you not make voice free? And we are the land of freedom fighters. We love everything that's free. So the moment you said that, look, voice is free, everyone said, wow, let's jump for this brand. But the brand made it easy because you use technology or science to create that fiber optic, create that pipeline into which you could push a multitude of products. So technology has to be the lowest common denominator. It can't be the highest common factor. If you use a mathematical analogy. You know, Benny talked about imagination and India lacks or doesn't lack. India is actually the capital of imagination. We have a problem for every solution. So we can erect complex, non-algorithm driven issues where nothing is required. I mean, we are the only people who are seeking answers even standing in a queue. You ask any Indian, why are you in a queue? Why not? They'll never answer a question. You ask any of us, are you going to Bombay tomorrow? The answer will be, I've just come back from Cochin. They will never answer the question. The question is, are you going to Bombay tomorrow? So we are fascinated by the complexity of human behavior, which is why we have invented this word jugaad. So, you know, you can do, these Band-Aid kind of technology inventions. But on a more serious note, I think India is in pole position. My only worry and my only concern is that we keep talking about the software prowess of India. We've got to move from body shopping and labor arbitrage to cutting-edge technology innovations. There is no reason why a Facebook or why Mark Zuckerberg couldn't have been, Shivlal Yadav. But had to be Mark Zuckerberg. We need to create that ecosystem. I'm no fan of any political party. I hate them all. But let me tell you, the ecosystem now in India is allowing startups to function. They're getting tax holidays, they're getting tax rebates, and I think the Prime Minister is doing the right thing by encouraging people. That's why we have 100 unicorns. Now, I don't know if it's one horn or the other thing, but it's working.
Just, I'll come back to you, Benny, but I think a week ago, Asha, you met the Cabinet Minister of Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal, and assumed to discuss the role of tech and entrepreneurship in the economic growth of India. What are the factors that are responsible, just to add to what Suhel said, for this meteoric or this sudden rise of Indian tech talent outside India, and what measures can be taken to actually make sure that happens within India? Because a lot of it is happening here.
You're right about that those of us who left the shores of India 20, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, we are finally graduating now into places of positions of authority and leadership in the US. But I think on when it comes to, in fact, before I go into comparing tech talent here in India, let me just tell you that Suhel's point about something has happened in the Indian ecosystem, whether it is Prime Minister's own sort of love affair with startups, or whether it is just deregulation of that whole space, whether it is tax breaks. Something is happening in the whole India stack where we are churning out startups of a quality that is comparable to anything coming out of Silicon Valley now. One of the things that we discussed with Piyush Goyal this time is what can they do in a jiffy where our companies can go public on NASDAQ now. We've just had only Freshworks go public. We should be having nothing less than 20 companies going public on NASDAQ every year, given the volume of what we are churning out over there. So I think that the entrepreneurship, the innovation, and the breakthroughs that we are going to be seeing out of India, they'll be uniquely Indian, but they'll be global in their scope. Just like how we are modularizing UPI right now, and we are selling it to Brazil. We are making money hand over fist, selling parts of UPI to Brazil and a bunch of other countries. This is disruptive and something that I have never seen before. Completely unprecedented move from the part of the Indian government. How it has become this forward-looking is still a mystery to me, but I just hope they continue on this trajectory.
Just a very, very quick point. You asked a very important question. Asha said, something has changed. This is a very serious point. Earlier, if you saw matrimonial ads in India, they said that we are looking for doctors, engineers, bureaucrats. That has changed. Failure was always castigated. That has changed. Earlier, you wanted a job because the job meant a certain amount of security. That has changed. So the youth in India today is willing to take risks. Please remember, from 1947 to 1952, we were the world's most risk-averse country. From 1952 till the Bangladesh liberation, 1971, we kept following a path of socialism, which we finally junked in 1996. 1991 with Narasimha Rao. If you look at the journey that India has made, your real economic progress and economic value has been added only in the last 30 years. And for a country of a 1.4 billion now size, to look at this level of achievement with, as Guru and Shazia mentioned in the earlier session, with the level of, polarity, both in economic terms as well as in social structure terms, it's a superb achievement. India, I'm not saying this because, I'm a fan of Donald Trump in Trumpian language, but I think India is finally ready to stand up and be counted at the high table of nations for what it has achieved in spite of everything. And I'll end by saying this. I've often said in my speeches that India is like the bumblebee. Aerodynamically, the bumblebee can't fly, because of its size. But the good thing is the bumblebee doesn't know that. So it flies happily. If you were to go by all the criteria that economists give us, we should have failed in 1949. But we don't care. We're continuing. We're here at JLF enjoying the hospitality and the warmth of Sanjoy.
I actually had this as a second follow-up question to you, but it's just a stat that India ranked, according to World Bank report, the ranking has improved from 142 in 2014 to 63 in 2022 of ease of doing business. And hopefully we still have a long road
That's
ahead.
because we paid back certain loans. World Bank only gives you rankings depending on how happy they are with you and you with them. I don't trust the World Bank at all. They're a bunch of thugs.
I'm moving on to MR.
I hope there's no one from the World Bank here.
It's being live streamed.
And they're thugs.
Emma, just tell us a little bit about Chalo Give, this online philanthropic effort centered around Indian American community, launched by Indiaspora. I believe you all gave away 15 million to India during the pandemic. So just share some more.
Yeah. Before that, I just want to take on Suhel a little bit in that, India has come of age, but for entrepreneurs to be successful on the world stage, it takes something else. We haven't seen a Google, a Facebook, LinkedIn. None of that has come out of India. So we have to wait and see.
No, I said that. I totally agree with you.
Why is that? That's the question.
Because MR moved to the United States.
So we got to.
MR was in Madurai, things would have been different. But MR is in Massachusetts. That's why we're screwed.
I agree. In San Francisco.
Why don't you come back?
San Francisco is better than Massachusetts.
Come back. We want you back. Help us. Encourage us.
First thing is to get actual dual citizenship. So that would be one way to do it, is real dual citizenship like we have. But anyway, coming back to what we can do in today's age, I think as Indians and diaspora living outside India, is to really have the ties with the homeland. I've gone to India every year for the last 12 years to run an event with the auspices of NASSCOM called NASSCOM Product Conclave, to take the diaspora, teach them, inspire them, do workshops and such. And it's good to see the evolution there. But I think in terms of us giving, it has to be more than just that. When India had the wave 2 of COVID, there was a tremendous amount of difficulty in India. And that's when the diaspora stood up. And in Diaspora, the organization I founded, did a program called Chalo Give, where we got the entire diaspora to rise up and give money to India. Not just money, but to find the right organizations in India to give money to, whether it's COVID care centers, whether it's food to migrant workers who are, starving, and the most tragic thing that we did was, imagine this, we gave money to organizations where they went to cemeteries and crematoriums and found out the person who had died of COVID was actually the sole breadwinner. And that's where, what Asha, you said, Aadhaar and Jandan and all this came into play. We didn't give them cash. These organizations gave them digital money into their account. So they couldn't say, we gave $400 to that person and keep the money. We were able to actually track the $400 equivalent in rupees actually went into the account of that person who was the sole breadwinner and to give it to their family. So that's the advancement of India today.
And that's the contribution. I mean, not to flatter either of them, but it's people like Asha and MR. It's foundations that are set up here, American Indian Foundation, blah, blah, blah. The IIT network. They have given back in great measure, for which I think the country is grateful. And I think this will only improve. Because see, you also have to turn the narrative. The narrative, I'll be honest with you, I mean, you know this better than I do. A lot of the media narrative is so skewed because they have issues with the politics of the country that the entire country gets tarred by the same brush, which then perhaps is a deterrent for investors. People want to invest in countries they love, not countries they fear. So hopefully that will change.
So let's get to Benny here. We've not let him speak for a while. So now let's talk about, the artists and the artistic community. We had a brief conversation about the social good entrepreneurship, especially your digital entrepreneurship, can do for the artists. So, and we're in the Jaipur Literature Festival.
Yeah, there's a word that gets thrown around a lot, especially in social media, influencers. And that word is like outmoded and influence, although we have 3-4 major league mega influencers right here. But I think the next wave that we are already seeing, whether it's at Meta or Google or at Apple, is the rise of the creators. And it's the rise of creativity at a level and across boundaries that could not have been crossed before. We did a campaign for Instagram last year in Germany where we brought in part of the campaign was encouraging creators to take their from marginalized communities to give them a bigger stage, essentially, because it was a partnership between us and O2, which is a big telecom provider in Germany. So for the first time in their life, you had these people who were like people with Down syndrome, LGBTQ artists. Actually, there was an Indian woman she's like an immigrant. She lives in Germany. She's an artist. They got to go to a stage that could not have been imagined before. And as a result of that, each of them has developed their art, which is also their business. And we should never forget that for an artist, art is how you make your money. So unless you make sure that they're paid a fair living, you're not going to get the art that you want. And so that's the potential disruptive power of the next wave of the digital economy, is that it will offer those two things. It'll offer the access to these global stages for these artists who could not have imagined going to that. It'll give them the tools to publish in a professional way, to create online concerts if you want, or, I don't know, painting classes. We've seen women, running dance schools, running global dance tutorials and all that, whatever. So they're all new ways in which they can generate revenue and reach audiences that they have not done before.
So Teamwork runs started a very good initiative called Art Matters during COVID. Yes. I think you should leverage some of the learnings to help take Art Matters to the next level. But just coming back to the good part, because I want to give you some time to also speak. We spoke about what digitization can do in the medical and the healthcare and the precision medicine field. Can you just throw that out a little bit more information?
I think that's my big gripe with all the conversations we have about technology. It's actually connected to something, Suhel, you said, is this dog walking business. It is there's a very frequently repeated meme that all the technology startups that come out are the things that 25 to 35-year-old white males who don't live with their parents anymore want. And so they say, wouldn't it be cool if somebody could do my laundry? That's the next big startup. Wouldn't it be cool if somebody could do? As opposed to real things that would actually help society and move the world forward, such as things such as transformative educational technologies or medical technology. So I'll talk about in healthcare two things. One is a trend that is going on right now that is just going to take on more and more force in the years ahead, which is what is called precision medicine. And it is this idea, it's a radical, disruptive sea change in the paradigm of medicine. What is the paradigm of medicine? You and I, we get sick, we go to the doctor says, okay, I think you have this disease. For this disease, there are one or two medicines, you get this one. That's how we've been treated. That's how medicine works. What my precision medicine says is, no, your chemistry is so different from mine that it could be a completely different treatment. In fact, Siddharth Mukherjee, who is from my school in Delhi and is one of the leading oncologists in New York and a Pulitzer Prize winning author on cancer, has talked about saying there's no such thing as cancer. There are individual cell mutations that happen for different reasons in different bodies. So that's what's happening right now, and that's what digitization can do, is to start to understand you at an individual chromosomal genetic level and deliver custom therapies. Obviously, huge business potential out of that, but also huge societal and personal individual benefits. So that's one. And the second one is in the area of education, and that's two levels. One is, let's talk about medical. You can do remote diagnostics in the metaverse. We are seeing today surgeons are practicing surgery on the human heart without actually opening up somebody's body. So that when she actually goes to do a heart surgery, she's 20 times better because she's been practicing for 200 times on that. Or that pilot. Or those kids who are doing a geography lesson and they actually get to go to Mars and see what Mars is like rather than sit and read some dusty school book. So these are the kinds of things that are, I think, going to ignite societal change.
Right. Asha, you mentioned your family foundation. So what are the kind of initiatives you're doing for the greater good of humanity?
So, Asad, our foundation is actually largely focused on giving in India, and we have set up a series of fabrication labs in Ahmedabad and Kerala, and so we have students who are learning how to do laser cutting, 3D printing, and stuff like that, and see if they can create distributed manufacturing environments. Second thing we do in India is maker festivals. We try and have these events where we bring in inventors from all across India and have them compete. And those who win, 20 to 30 of them get to come to Silicon Valley as my guests. And I hold them through the process of fundraising for their first round and helping some of the more mature ones move to the Valley for the next round.
Sure. Just before we open it up into questions, just let MR answer this. And it's in the area of sustainability, do you think sustainability could be at the core of innovation?
Absolutely. I think, with everything we've been talking about climate change, we have to do something about that. And digitization and technology can really, really, really solve it. And the one thing that I think is happening is, if you look at the dot-com bubble, it was all about technology. And only maybe $100 billion got wasted in the dot-com bubble, and no governments went broke. But out of that came Google and some of these companies, right? It was only $100 billion of private money going into it. So one of my friends was opining, why doesn't that happen in climate tech? We wish we had a bubble in climate tech. I think that's starting to happen now. We want to spend $100 billion of private capital trying to find out solutions. Out of that will come 3 or 4 amazing companies that can help us. So I'm very optimistic that the bubble is building in climate tech. Everybody's investing in climate tech now, which is good to see. And I think out of that will come some really breakthrough solutions. And so I'm very, very, very optimistic we will solve a lot of the issues that we're trying to do because of this investment. And countries are not going broke. Okay? That's the important thing.
Thank you for that. Should we just open it up to questions? I think we have a few minutes left. If anybody wants to, there's a mic up front, or there may not be a mic.
How much time do we have for the panel? My thing was, where Sanjay Roy has already shown, and I'm not flattering, great leadership, you can't imagine the 2 areas digital is changing India. Number one, in the entire domain of soft power. You'll be surprised the amount of people, the young, who are now being reconnected to Indian classical music, to Indian classical dance forms, because it's available on their on fingertips. The second, it sounds strange, you can't imagine how many young people and people who want to retrain in their lives have used digital technology to relearn, train in the area of food. So it's a completely different universe that we are seeing there. And I'm seeing soft power as well as commercial tangential benefits coming out of this.
So I take your point about the problems that are being solved are generally by middle-class, white, 25-year-olds, male, and that the bigger problems of education and health are not being solved. So what can we do so that those problems are actually solved by our tech entrepreneurs?
Well, I think what MR said, I think Joe Biden has done a lot to ensure that that'll happen, because by putting $750 billion into sustainability investment, that is the next moonshot. And that's going to create, hopefully, more than many bubbles and lots of innovative entrepreneurial energy in the right area. So what you can do to answer that is more of what this has done, which is there's things you can do at the private sector level and things you can do at the government level. At the government level, you need to create favorable tax scenarios, you need to create incentives for people to invest in the right areas. In Singapore, they pay teachers almost as much as they pay doctors and things. Guess who has the best educational stats in the world? Right? It's very simple. It's just economics. So if the government can incentivize and make it attractive for you to say, come up with innovations in healthcare, that's one. And the private sector can say, fine, if the government's not doing that, let me show you the potential. If you come up with something in healthcare as opposed to something in dog walking, everybody, that is relevant to everybody. So your market scales to a whole other level. If you're in education, if you're in healthcare, if you're in diversity and inclusion. So I think in all of these cases, it's two parts. One is the government's job is to facilitate, open up, connect, collaborate, government and organizations. And the private sector's job is to speak to the opportunity, because that's the carrot that will lead people to say, let me stop doing these like silly things that most of the world doesn't care about, and let me go there, not because it's good for the world, but because I'm going to build a huge business on that. And by the way, it's good for the world. That's great. I don't care what your motivations are, as long as you're doing the right thing. So again, incentivize and get them excited. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I have a different opinion, and that is government doesn't need to do anything. I think entrepreneurs need to go for it. So if entrepreneurs think that a certain demographic is where they make money, they go there, right? Just because government puts money into some other sector, they're not going to go there because that's a subsidy. I think we need to just go where, private capital is funding companies, and they'll get it done. So I think government may be subsidizing certain industries. Maybe at some point it's a wrong industry that they subsidized.
No, I just want to clarify, it's not subsidies.
Okay.
The internet would not exist if a small US defense agency called DARPA did not have a budget to develop some kind of alternative backup communication system in case Russian bombs landed. Okay? So DARPA created this network, and then universities said, hey, wait, we could all use this network. And now all of us can't imagine a world without the internet. But nobody was sitting there in 1960 saying, we should come up with the internet. It was the government saying, we should. So there are some things where, when it's not immediately profitable to you, the government needs to, I totally agree that it is the fire of entrepreneurship. I've spent my whole life in the private sector. But what the government can do is facilitate by incentives, which is make it attractive for you, and put the seed capital. The government is the original, before Asha, the angel before the VC. Is the government is the angel. The government is supposed to be your angel, or as they say in India, your MyBap. So that's what your MyBap is supposed to do, is put the initial funding.
But I think to MR's point, I think that's part of the reason why you don't have the Googles, Facebooks, Twitters coming out of India, because there's way too much government, mollycoddling, hand-holding, and stuff like that. So that's why a lot of people run away. All of us ran away because of that.
See.
But we love our government.
But we love India. Right? But we love India, though.
Okay, so since I don't think there are any other questions, I can't see any hands. So just to wrap up, what's the latest or the new disruption we should expect in the space?
Well, like I said, billions of dollars have gone into metaverse, anything with an acronym, metaverse, Web3, this, that. We'll see if something comes out of that space. Mm-hmm. I think one of the technologies that holds a lot of promise is blockchain. Mm-hmm. Let's see if that can actually help a lot of businesses and a lot of people, do things. I think out of that, NFTs is another thing, but is NFTs the way to go, or is there some connection to the physical world?
Phygital.
Phygital, as they call it, which I don't like that word, but it's like this weird word, but
it works.
maybe that takes off. So there's some promising things that are coming up, but nothing clear on the horizon.
Closing.
It's space travel. I'm seeing that coming up into as an industry. I don't know why it's happening, but it's happening.
Maybe our next session will be from space.
Or I said in the metaverse.
I'm looking.
We'll all be sitting in our pajamas,
I'm looking at an app which, when you look at it, emits signals which help you lose weight. And I think that might happen.
I'm not using that one.
Not everything doesn't revolve around you yet, but one day it will. The second thing that I'm looking for are panel discussions where there are no moderators. I'm just joking, yeah.
That would be a utopian dream. Last thought?
I would say that I totally agree with Asha. Space travel is one of them. The next frontier is bioengineering, though. And so I think you're going to see Google has a company that is interested in longevity. You're going to see a lot of you are already seeing. Sorry, not going to. You're already seeing hundreds of millions of dollars being sunk into the final frontier, which is death, and so into prolonging life, into adding different things. So I think there are 20 other things I could talk about, but I think that's the one that all of us care about, is not dying. So I think that's the one.
But thank you, guys, for this insightful panel. I mean, just one view thing is, IBM, Google, Microsoft, Adobe, Twitter, all their CEOs of Indian origin. So hopefully some of them will stay behind in India or even come here and go back, and India will be shining as it's supposed to be. But thank you so much for your insights, and thank you to this audience for that one question that they asked us. Thank you.